The moment her world stopped wasn't when she saw him walk in, or when he smiled nervously like a man who had forgotten how to hope. It was when a tiny voice, soft and trembling yet impossibly certain, broke through the quiet hum of the cafe and said something that made her heart forget how to beat. "You're my real mom." Timing just slow, it shattered. Oriel Vance, the woman who commanded boardrooms, who turned failing companies into empires, who never let emotions dictate a single decision in her meticulously controlled life, stood frozen with a porcelain cup halfway to her lips. The sunlight pouring through the glass windows of the cafe painted everything gold, but inside her, something darker and deeper stirred. Something she had buried so completely she believed it no longer existed. Before the story unfolds further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles life sometimes hides in ordinary days, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Heartfelt Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. Oriel had never believed in blind dates, not in love arranged by algorithms, nor in the randomness of chance encounters orchestrated by well-meaning friends. Her life was built on certainty, on calculated risks, on outcomes she could predict and control. As the CEO of a global tech company, her days were structured down to the minute, her decisions carrying the weight of thousands of employees and billions in revenue. There was no room for unpredictability, no room for vulnerability. And yet, there she was. Her assistant had insisted, not out of obligation, but out of concern. There had been a quiet loneliness clinging to Oriel lately, something even she couldn't ignore anymore. It lived in the silence of her penthouse at night, in the untouched dinner plates, in the way she paused too long, when she saw families laughing together in passing. So she agreed, just once, just one evening she couldn't control. When Elias Rowe walked in, he didn't look like the kind of man who belonged in her world. His shirt was clean but slightly wrinkled, his posture careful, like someone used to carry more weight than he showed. There was a kindness in his eyes, but also exhaustion, the kind that didn't come from work alone, but from life. He wasn't what she expected, and for reasons she couldn't explain, that unsettled her more than anything else. He apologized for being a minute late, his voice warm but hesitant, as if unsure he was allowed to take up space at her table. She noticed the way his eyes softened when he spoke, the way he held himself with quiet dignity despite whatever storms he had weathered. She also noticed a small hand holding his. The little girl beside him couldn't have been older than 5. Her dark curls framed a face that was both delicate and expressive, her wide eyes scanning the cafe with innocent curiosity. She clutched a worn stuffed rabbit in one hand, the other wrapped tightly around her father's fingers, as if anchoring herself to him. Oriel hadn't been told there would be a child. For a brief moment, irritation flickered through her. This wasn't what she signed up for. This wasn't structured, wasn't predictable. This was messy. But then the girl looked at her, and everything changed. There was something in that gaze, something searching, something fragile yet full of hope, that made Oriel feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. It wasn't admiration or fear or expectation. It was something deeper, something that reached past the polished exterior she presented to the world and touched something raw beneath it. The introduction was simple. Elias explained, quietly and with a hint of apology, that his babysitter had canceled at the last minute, that he didn't want to cancel entirely, that he hoped it wouldn't be a problem. Oriel could have said no, could have stood up, walked away, returned to her controlled, predictable life. But she didn't. Instead, she nodded, and then the little girl spoke. "You're my real mom." The words didn't echo in the cafe. They echoed inside her. Oriel's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the cup, porcelain pressing against her skin, as if grounding her to reality. The world around her blurred, the conversations of strangers fading into nothing. She hadn't heard those words in years, not since the day she lost everything. The past wasn't something Oriel allowed herself to revisit. It was locked away behind years of success, behind carefully constructed walls that kept her safe from the pain that once threatened to destroy her. But that single sentence, spoken by a child who had never met her before, shattered those walls in an instant. Elias looked horrified. He immediately apologized, his face flushed with embarrassment as he gently corrected his daughter, explaining that children sometimes imagine things, that she didn't understand what she was saying. But the girl didn't look confused. She looked certain. Oriel tried to speak, but her voice didn't come. Instead, memories surged forward, unstoppable and overwhelming. Years ago, before she became the woman the world admired, she had been someone else, someone softer, someone who believed in love, in family, in a future that wasn't defined by contracts and corporate strategy. She had been a mother. For a brief, fleeting moment in time, she had held a life that was hers, a child whose tiny heartbeat had become the center of her universe. But fate had been cruel. An accident, a hospital room filled with machines and silence. A goodbye that came far too soon. She buried that version of herself the day she buried her daughter. Or at least, she thought she did. Now, sitting across from a stranger and his child, hearing those impossible words, she realized something terrifying. Grief doesn't disappear. It waits. The rest of the afternoon unfolded in a haze. Oriel found herself staying longer than she intended, listening to Elias as he spoke about his life, about raising his daughter alone after losing his wife. His story wasn't dramatic, but it was real, filled with small sacrifices, quiet resilience, and a love so profound it showed in every word he spoke. She found herself watching the girl. Her name was Marin, as she colored on a napkin, occasionally glancing up at Oriel with that same searching gaze. There was no logical explanation for what had happened, but logic had never felt so irrelevant. Days passed, but the memory didn't fade. It lingered, replaying in her mind during meetings, during sleepless nights, during moments she was supposed to be focused on everything else. She tried to dismiss it, tried to convince herself it was coincidence, imagination, a child's innocent mistake. But something inside her refused to let go. So she did something she hadn't done in years. She took a chance. She reached out to Elias. Their second meeting wasn't planned as a date. It was simpler, quieter, a walk in the park. Sunlight filtering through trees, the laughter of children in the distance. It felt strangely unfamiliar to Oriel, this world outside boardrooms and deadlines. Marin ran ahead, her laughter light and free, while Elias walked beside Oriel, their conversation easy in a way that surprised them both. And slowly, something began to change. Not all at once, not dramatically, but in small, almost imperceptible ways. Oriel started leaving work earlier. She started noticing things she had long ignored. The warmth of sunlight, the comfort of shared silence, the way Marin's hand instinctively reached for hers without hesitation. She started feeling again, but with that came fear. Because opening her heart meant risking everything she had worked so hard to protect. It meant confronting the past she had buried. It meant accepting that love, once lost, could be found again, but never without cost. As weeks turned into months, the bond between them deepened. Elias saw past Oriel's carefully crafted exterior, recognizing the vulnerability she tried to hide. Marin, in her innocent certainty, never questioned it. She simply accepted Oriel as someone who belonged, and for the first time in years, Oriel allowed herself to believe she might belong too. But life doesn't offer second chances without testing them. A revelation came, not through dramatic confrontation, but through quiet truth. Records, dates, fragment of a past that didn't align the way they should have. Questions that led to answers neither of them expected. Marin hadn't been mistaken. She hadn't imagined anything. The truth was far more complicated and far more painful than coincidence. Years ago, in the chaos following the accident, there had been confusion, a hospital overwhelmed, records mishandled, identities lost in the rush to save lives. Oriel's child had not died that day. She had been lost. And somehow, impossibly, she had been found again. The realization didn't bring immediate joy. It brought disbelief, anger, grief for the years stolen, for the moments missed, for the life that could have been. Oriel struggled with it. She questioned everything, herself, fate, the fairness of it all. Elias struggled too. The daughter he had raised, loved, protected. How could he reconcile the truth without losing her? But love isn't diminished by truth. It's redefined by it. What followed wasn't easy. It was messy, emotional, filled with moments of doubt and fear. But it was also filled with something stronger. Hope.